Iain Begg is a professor at the European Institute at the London School of Economics and Political Science. He joins us now live from Cambridge. Iain, good to have you on the show. I mean, this is such a contentious and complicated issue. What do you think is likely to happen next?
Well, there's clearly escalation going on, and that escalation carries risks with it of, as your piece mentioned, provoking some sort of trade war. I think there's some things that need to be said at the outset, and one is that quite clearly the Northern Ireland Protocol, despite being negotiated by Boris Johnson and his colleagues, is not working the way it was intended. Therefore, something has to change. And that something is to mollify the opinion of the unionist community in Northern Ireland. There's not just the one party, there's an entire section of the population who finds it very uncomfortable to be in a position where they are not members of the British United Kingdom in the same way as other parts of the United Kingdom. And that leads to great tensions. And yet at the same time, you have to make this consistent with having no border in Ireland. Well, these things really cannot be reconciled except by trying to simplify the paperwork. And that's the point they've reached, is saying, couldn't we have a green channel? Couldn't we have what the European side calls an express channel, which is really a green channel by a different name? So they're agreeing on this, but they're escalating the tensions in a way which is going to be counterproductive.
And how likely is that, do you think, to achieve that?
But the fact that Britain is now proposing to have a unilateral law abolishing at least some parts of the protocol causes trouble. It means that the European Union has to react. And if it reacts in a way which opens up a different part of the wider agreement between the United Kingdom and the EU, which is called the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, then there's no telling what other things they might want to unravel because it's such a carefully organized compromise. And that's where the threats of trade war become realistic.
You alluded to that, a potential trade war being triggered as in our news piece. A lot has changed since Brexit. Potential global crisis, recession rather, inflation. What do you think a trade war with the EU would potentially look like?
Well, potentially it means just restrictions on British access to European markets and access to EU markets, British markets for EU countries. And that could mean tariffs, it could mean quotas, it could mean additional paperwork. In effect, what happened with the agreement that was reached is there are no tariffs and there are no controls on goods crossing the channel from England into the European Union. But there are additional pieces of paperwork that have to be done. And it's likely that the first stage will be to intensify the paperwork, to demand greater certification of particular goods and so on. So it could be an escalation by stages. I don't think we're going to see Donald Trump-style imposition of tariffs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Iain Begg, thank you very much for joining us on the NewsHour. I do appreciate the analysis. Thank you.
Thank you.